Here, welcome everybody to the Finding Faith podcast. I'm here with Paul, and we met at the gym.
We did. Yep.
Then turns out that you're a Christian. Then turns out that you live, you work right next to where you work out.
Yep.
And then we started having a conversation about faith one day at the gym, and we're like, dude, you just need to be on this podcast.
Dude, I was so pumped up that you were doing it, Nick, because I feel like there are a lot of different podcasts out there giving good information, right? But more along the lines of like, hey, where's your faith journey at? How have you continuously gotten there? And what are you doing right now to just kind of, excel your faith? Mm-hmm. And it's something that with your brand and kind of like what you're doing, everything related, gives it a little bit more of a picture of like your why and like your purpose versus, looking at things and just being like, okay, I know why that guy, or I see the success, but why is that? What is kind of like the root of it? So,
oh, I like that. The root of everything. Yeah. And what's crazy too is when you go to the gym, you really don't know everybody's story. Everybody has their own story. You just see them at the gym. They're doing their thing. They're working out. Sometimes they'll be wearing a necklace, and sometimes the necklace happens to be a cross. And it's like, oh, okay, I think that person's a Christian. But you really don't know anybody's story unless you sit down, you have a conversation with them. And it was so cool that I got introduced to you. Was it by Morgan? Is Morgan the one? Yeah. So I actually
Morgan,
remember.
By the way,
yeah, good for Morgan. Also a singer. You should check her out. Just on her live.
She's awesome.
Yeah. So I think I got introduced to you by Tony like a day or two before we talked. And then when she put two and two together, she's like, "Oh, have you met Paul?" I said, "Yeah, I was actually just talking to Paul," and she came up or whatever. She introduced us again. It's just crazy because once again, like you go into these places, you don't know their story. And I was talking to somebody else about this earlier, which is like, if you present yourself as a Christian or if you let it be known that you have that faith or whatever, you really never know what other conversations will come because of it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Nick. And like just with your clothing brand and everything, I was seeing the fabric and I was obviously feeling it and stuff. And there were so many cool things about like what you were doing and what you were kind of pushing towards like the next goal, trying to do this podcast, trying to do different things to where you're being more creative, but you don't have to wake up and question yourself a little bit more than some people. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be a Christian or, whatever the case is, but I think it's a good, just kind of what we were referencing a little bit earlier, like a root of why you do things and gives you a little bit more purpose, gives you some place, a different place to just kind of like in your heart, whether it resonates well there. And I don't know, man, I think it was cool because with our story, just with like Morgan and everything, I would have never, thought that like, there was somebody out there that was also just really trying to, not only be an entrepreneur, but working in a similar similar company that I'm working with right now. And it's just like, dude, you're trying to find your way, you're trying to find your faith path and everything. So it's pretty cool.
Let's go to your story a little bit. So first what do you do? And then let's go into your faith a little bit as well.
Cool. Yeah. So I am a national account coordinator. I work for a company called Inside Global. Great company. 70% women, actually, 30% guys.
Wow.
So definitely a lot of interactions with different women of obviously like so many different backgrounds and religions and stuff like that. So I kind of really found myself understanding like my role early on. So I started off as a recruiter. And I mean, it was fun. It was great.
It's a grind.
But it's a grind. Yeah. That's the word. And ended up just kind of really focusing on what was the next step. Like, what was I going to do? I was living in South Florida at the time. So
you started in Florida?
Yep. Okay. Started in Florida, right around like Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton area. Loved it. Went to college there, and then did my master's over there as well. So bachelor's did it at FAU, master's did it at Nova Southeastern, and then just kind of straight transitioned into work. So recruiting was not kind of like what I wanted to do early on.
Yeah.
But the company is so versatile, man, that they're able to just mold you however you want. So there was an opening in Atlanta, which is our HQ, with accounts that we work with specifically like Nike, FedEx, Salesforce, different accounts to where you're looking at KPIs, you're looking at metrics, a little bit more on the analytics side, and then being able to work with MSPs, so managed service providers and external points of contact. Dude, when I heard about that, man, I was like, sign me up.
Really?
Like, wanted to go through the interview process, underwent it. And it started off just it was just kind of like a 2 to 3 month process. Started to question a little bit my faith there.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because it was something that I was so passionate about. And I was like, God, why aren't you giving it to me right now?
Oh.
And I think it was me trying to do my own things with that time.
Yes.
Yep. And dude, yeah. So long story short, ended up moving down here, got the role, super pumped.
Yeah.
Love Atlanta, by the way, but gave me just such a different perspective on my faith journey and like what it took to really trust in God, even when things aren't going well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because dude, I feel like it's so easy to sit down and be like, you know what? God is great. God is good when things are going well.
Exactly.
And then
but what happens when things are going bad?
Dude, that's it, man. So yeah, man, ended up moving here to Atlanta. I've loved it since and just kind of continuing to do that role right now. Hopefully just kind of progressing within the company. Definitely a lot of big goals, a lot of new initiatives that I'm kind of trying to drive. So we'll see how it goes, man.
That's awesome. So I started as a recruiter as well.
Yeah.
But I was with a company where I knew I wasn't going to be there long. I wasn't good at it. It just wasn't me. I was never that sales type of person. And I think it's so cool that your company lets you kind of branch out and do your own thing. When I was at my company, it was very much like, oh yeah, I mean, you can stay with the company, you're going to get promoted, but if you get promoted, you're just going to be like the next recruiter. It's like the top recruiter or the account manager with that kind of undersees or whatever, oversees all the recruiters. So it's really cool that your company let you branch out and do a bunch of different things. That's awesome. Let's go into now your faith. So I want to dive deeper into those challenges they were talking about. But first, let's just go back into how were you raised? Was Christianity always a thing that was inside of your life growing up? Was it brought on by your family? So let's just go into that story now.
Dude, yeah, that's awesome. I grew up Catholic. So my mom's actually from the Dominican Republic. So grew up, first language was Spanish. Speak Spanish fluently, which is pretty cool.
You do. Yeah. I noticed that in the gym.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely some great interactions at the gym. But dude, yeah, so grew up just kind of in a very Catholic Hispanic household. Just would go to mass every single Sunday. That was just kind of the drill, prayers, everything like that. But when it came to just understanding God, I felt like it was more of a rudimentary process. It was more of just kind of checking off a couple different boxes versus having that personalized relationship with Jesus. So
did you get your communion, your confirmation?
Communion, bro, confirmation, the Eucharist. I mean the wine, man, getting a couple extra sips here and there. But
I was even an altar server.
So you were involved too. Okay, I was gonna say.
But it's very similar. Very similar. I got out of everything very similar to what you did. I would say.
Yeah. Just kind of going through the motions, in a way. But yeah, dude, I honest to God was not really in tune with my faith early on. I was really just kind of trying to focus on the wrong things, wasn't really going through life with a purpose. Just was, I mean, you're a kid, right? You kind of you're thrown into this just kind of like medley of, all right, go to church. Then the next thing is like, we're going to pray every day as a family, have a brother and a sister too. So they were also like, involved as well. But we would just, sometimes it was showing up late to mass and like not doing things just kind of like diligently, So just kind of grew up doing that a little bit and then shifted my mindset when I got, later on into college. So it took me a while to really just kind of like transition into who I am now. But yeah, man, it's a long journey, I'll tell you.
When you first got into college, were you still going to mass every single day? Were you still going to church okay, so you kind of died off a little bit.
Died off completely right out. Yeah, after I finished high school and it wasn't like, required. Hey, Paul, you have this definite schedule that you have to kind of uphold. Yeah, dude, it was just, hey, whenever I go back home and like I see my parents and stuff, for sure. But dude, because I played baseball my whole life, growing up all the way from 6 years old until I was about 18, 19 years old. So grew up playing it, loved it. And that was that was something I idolized in a way. I feel like you grow up, I mean, some people idolize money, all these different things. For me, it was baseball and the success that I wanted in baseball, So once that kind of ended after I actually went to so I forgot to mention, school before I went to FAU was South Georgia State College.
Okay.
So it was tiny little school in Douglas, Georgia. I kid you not, man. One Walmart, one like McDonald's, and one like, I don't even think there was a Chick-fil-A around there. But yeah, man, it was just one of those schools to where all you did was baseball.
Okay.
You know? Like
you played there, I'm assuming?
Yep. Played there, was a pitcher over there, was more of like a reliever, and then went over to FAU because I knew my passion wasn't baseball. So tried out for the Florida Atlantic team, ended up making like their fall team and stuff. But when it transitioned into like the summer or the spring ball, they cut a bunch of people and I was part of that roster. So I had to find a different passion.
Yeah.
And that's when the working out really started, you know, from 19 to 20 years old. Just really made that my main focus, but still lack of faith, you know, during that time frame. It was not until like my senior year, like later on, like junior, senior year of college was when I transitioned fully into like, all right, I want to find my own church. I want to try to figure out. And my brother actually really helped me with that path there. So
younger, older brother?
Younger brother, man. So it was an ego check.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that for sure. You know, because older brother, it's kind of like more experienced, understands the world a little bit more in a different way or a different lens. And my younger brother was just really, really kicked up his faith early on. So he was just super passionate about God and just about everything surrounding it. He would dedicate his life to it. He's, you know, still just like, you know, very adamant on his faith. But yeah, man, he really was the main reason that I kind of started going to church on my own with him. I would start to go with him, and then, you know, slowly but surely I went, you know, without him. So
was he so when he was kind of embracing his own spiritual journey, was he still going to a Catholic church, or did he already at that time kind of branch out and start doing his own thing, or did he find his own church?
Dude, he found his own church early on, right when he got to college. My mistake was I went to a small college and didn't have that first like initiation to where, hey, I'm gonna, you know, fully focus on God during that time frame. I was just like baseball working out. And he just the first year, freshman year of college, he was like, dude, I'm gonna get myself involved in a Christian group, you know, gonna try to at least just put myself out there. And it just transcended into something to where now he's involved.
So going to your whole idolatry thing when you were putting baseball first, now when that was happening, was your belief in God ever like tested in the sense of like, I don't even believe in anything right now because I'm just focused on everything else, like I don't even really care, or like how did that go?
Dude, great question. I would say for me, I never lost belief in God.
Okay.
That was never an issue. It was more so, God, you're taking a backseat here, and I can run it my way. I can do things my way, and I don't need to worry about you. I don't need to count on you. Big mistake early on. And I feel like, dude, it's so easy to think you're doing things your way.
Yeah.
And then realize later on that God was really just kind of pulling the strings the whole time.
Ooh.
So pretty crazy.
So there's a couple things I could bring up where I would say I thought that I had control, and where I basically said like, I feel like you're telling me, and at the time I didn't know it was God. I feel like something is telling me not to do this, but I want to do it anyway because I think it's what I'm supposed to do. So when I moved to Kentucky after college, I moved to Kentucky, back to Kentucky because I went to UK. Bought a house in Kentucky, and I felt like everything was telling me not to do it, but I forced it. And then it was just the worst situation I ever had in my entire life. And once I finally figured out like, oh, this isn't something I'm supposed to do, this was a mistake, it magically, like I bought my house, bro, in February and I sold it in September. And it was a house. Oh, and I sold it for a profit, I should say. So it was basically like a renovated house. I drilled a bunch of holes in it, put a home gym in the living room. Cause I mean, I'm a single dude and whatnot.
Of course.
Yeah. So like I literally had a rogue home gym in my living room, drilled a bunch of holes for my TVs and whatnot. And this house was on the market for like 2 years. Then I bought it, sold it like 6 months, whatever it is. I don't know what the math is, but from February to September, sold it for a profit for like $8,000 more than what I paid for. Once I discovered like I shouldn't be here anymore, I'm like, please just like, I honestly thought that I was going to have this house for like years and years to come, or I'd have to sell it for a loss. I'm like, I can't afford that. Like I just got a job at Salesforce. So like I was making that transition or whatever, but like it all just fell into place. And it was like, God basically said to me, all right, you finally understand that you're not this like invincible person that can do whatever he wants to do. Like, thank you for realizing it. I'm going to fix it for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, God will get you out of so many things if you just rely on him. And when you think you're too far gone, you never are.
No. Oh, we should talk. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, let's elaborate on this a little bit. Okay. So you said when you're too far gone, you're really not. What made you say that? Is there anything in particular that made you say those words?
Well, dude, I can relate so many times in my life to where I've seen different situations or I've seen different outcomes of things happen. And then I was like, he was there, obviously he's omnipresent.
Yeah.
But in the way of like, I made these decisions on my own and I got myself in so much trouble doing these things. And then even though I've made those mistakes and I've really gone out of my way to fall short, it's like God's just kind of tapping me on the shoulder going, hey, Paul, like, I'm still here, buddy.
Yeah.
You can come back. Like, so it gives me such a different kind of perspective now, seeing how many times I haven't trusted him and then he's still been there and brought me back to reality. So
when I went through, I would say the biggest spiritual hardship that I've gone through was last year.
Wow.
And it was because I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, but I thought based on society and based on my environment that these were things I was supposed to be engaging in. So and that also caused like the most anxiety and like the most like pain that I've ever had my entire life. Like there's just a bunch of things that I went through. And honestly, after that year, I strongly believed like, did I make too many mistakes that I'm not even worthy of anything anymore? Like if there is a God, did I do so much where it's like, I'm just going to be rejected anyway? And I honestly thought for a while, and this is probably what made it even worse, was like, dude, I'm too far gone. So those words that you were saying, too far gone, like it just hits home because it's like, I literally remember feeling that way and it damaged me and it tortured me. And that is the enemy speaking, because if you read the Bible and if you listen, that's never the case. That is seriously never the case. And I used to never understand like, and this is just coming to me now, but I was talking to this girl and I asked her, because this was before I got the idea of the podcast. I was asking her like, where does your faith come from? Because like this was last year. Because like I just don't know what is real anymore and what's not real. And she said like one of the things that really hit her was she had an uncle that was in prison or whatever. And she asked him like, she's like, are you worried or whatever? And he's like, no, because like I found God and he let me know that everything is okay. And like, he passed away, I think, but something along the lines of like, he spoke to me and he let me know that like, I'm forgiven. He basically like wanted to minister God as much as possible in his final like days, in his final years. And I just thought that was so cool, because I think a lot of us, or a lot of people, believe truly that their mistakes that they made, their past, controls who they are in their future, and they will never be able to get rid of their past. And they will just never be good enough for that reason. But that's not true. That is the enemy.
I think it's crazy, man, because none of that is ever written just kind of like in the New Testament, like from Jesus or anything. It's really just kind of a common misconception from what we've adopted from maybe, somebody that was Christian that we might have known for like a little bit of time and then completely, just cast you out or whatever the case was. Or, a dad that didn't love you, a mom that was just kind of, not supportive of you or anything like that. And it's a preconceived notion that we've kept throughout our lives. It could be, one of those situations, it could be something else. But for me personally, it was really just kind of, my perfectionist mentality and always trying to do everything to the best of my ability. And then if I fall short, error or failure was not necessarily an option. So I've learned that really is the enemy kind of just creeping in
100%
versus God just being like, hey, no matter what you do, you're enough. And I think that's something that we've all learned. And even, when Jesus was, up on the cross and he was nailed to the cross and he was about to die, there's a man next to him, pretty much just was not the best person his whole life. And Jesus said, there's a place for you in heaven. And regardless of what that man had done, he believed that Jesus was, the Messiah, the person. And he was able to, join him in heaven. So it's never too late, man. Even at the end of your life, when you're nailed to a cross right next to Jesus, he's right there, kind of like smiling, like, thank you for, accepting it.
In the Bible too, in the New Testament, there are so many testimonies and so many stories about sinners, like people that were cast offs. The majority of the people inside the Bible were cast off, were castaways, that were people that others considered sinners and undeserving of God's love. And Jesus comes and he tells them straight up, no, you're forgiven. Follow me. And there's so much power in that. There's so much power in these people. And once again, it was like this Bible, obviously since I was born, because it was made thousands of years ago, but like this Bible that I've had, that I went to church with, that I tried not to pay attention to. I would go to church and I would hope that my dad would let me sleep that day inside of church. Like that same Bible talked this entire time about all these different castaways, all these different people that committed these horrific sins, but they were forgiven by Jesus. And then they followed him. And it's just crazy because that was there the entire time. And I just never opened it up to understand that. And even when I did open up, I couldn't comprehend that. And talking about following God and going on your own journey, like committing that time to finding him in whatever season you are in is just so worth it. And when you put him first above all else, I love that you talked about idolatry, because I was just talking about this with someone before, where it's like you put things first, whether it be sports, whether it be money, whether it be a relationship, whatever it is, put him first and watch how all that anxiousness that you have, all that anxiety you have, it just goes away.
Yeah. And I think it's crazy too, because anxiety and these things that we kind of deem as, flaws of ours. I mean, being anxious and just kind of distributing it in the right way or using it in the right way to where it's like, hey man, I can't sit down right now and then just, watch TV for 4 hours, watch a new Netflix series for 4 or 5 hours, whatever the case is. It's like, you're kind of like anxious to do something, you're passionate, they're all correlated in a positive way as long as you use them, to God's advantage and to your own advantage, versus seeing some of the things like, man, I'm angry right now, but are you angry because, somebody's betrayed you and you're not able to forgive them? Or are you angry because you aren't good enough, or whatever the case is? So just being able to compartmentalize those things, but then also understand, like, where is this coming from? Is this coming from the enemy, or is this coming from more of a passionate place?
Amen.
So
let's go into, because I really wanted to dive into this. You were talking about like you were tested during that time when you were trying to get to Georgia, and there's a long interview process. Do you mind diving into that whole experience and what basically would happen?
Yeah, dude, there's so many different things that happened in that year kind of like time frame to where I was in that recruiting role and then trying to transition into the new national account coordinator role. Dude, I remember early on I was in a relationship and it was a tough one. There was a lot of just kind of back and forth. We weren't really seeing eye to eye. Long distance is tough, but in that situation, long distance really wasn't one of the key factors that broke me apart. Just wasn't in the best headspace with her. Her and I were not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things, like I was saying. But dude, it was that kind of like weighing in, losing myself in a way to where I wasn't focusing on the right things. I was, I don't drink, I don't smoke or anything, but for me, even just kind of like indulging in food and then just constantly like that gluttonous mentality. I was just, eating kind of like whatever I wanted or whatever the case was. I was working out without a purpose, without a passion. And I was trying to go out and just enjoy myself at night and do it more of like an escape than anything. So those were all just kind of superficial factors that were playing, a part. And then to dive in deeper, I wasn't happy with what I was doing from a relationship standpoint too. Wasn't happy with who I was with, but also like what I could become out of this relationship. So all of those obviously were key.
Did you feel like, and not to cut you off, did you ever feel like in that relationship, like you were stuck?
So
because you were so like into it.
I will say I've never been in a relationship longer than a year. So
Okay.
I guess like after the year mark, I feel like that's when you kind of get a little bit stuck. But I mean, yeah, there were definitely moments where I felt like glued on the floor. My feet were just like stuck under me and I wasn't able to move or I wasn't able to progress with that person. And I think just to even dive in a little bit more with relationships in general, man, like if you guys aren't both on the same page when it comes to, I think key ingredient number one is going to be religion, right?
Yes.
Politics can come and go, but like if your religion and your morals and like what you stand for are, just kind of desensitized over time, it's very hard for you to look at that person and say, hey, let's kind of continue forward, because you think about the future, you think about raising kids, family.
How's that going to work?
So that was kind of the glue right there that I needed. Yep. And it wasn't there.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't really there when it came to that, or it wasn't as kind of like God had presented it to me, early on in my life and stuff. But dude, that was a huge factor, recruiting and everything.
Yeah.
Was just not my passion either. So just a compilation of all those things. It was like, dude, how do I get out of this? Like, why am I, chosen to do this? I have my MBA, your ego kind of kicks in a little bit too. It's like, dude, I have my master's degree. Like, why am I not making the money that I perceive myself making, or all these things? And
I went through school. I paid all that money. I did all this stuff. Like, I am entitled to get this. Like, I should be getting this. Why am I not getting this?
Yep. And I think another key ingredient to that is the vulnerability to others and to yourself, and being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey man, I have done all these things and God will provide. Just be patient. And be okay with what you have right now. And that was something that I definitely struggled with early on in my life, in my career. And then now just kind of really starting to be a little bit more vulnerable with, obviously on this podcast, super pumped to talk about it. But just, hey, what's your faith journey? What did it take for you to get to where you're at? Whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, spiritually, whatever it is. And that was something that I was really passionate about.
So you were struggling there because you felt like, hey, I did so much because of this. Why you're not giving that to me? Let's keep on going with the story then. So like, what started happening after that, or what did happen after that, and what came about?
Crazy story, man. But she ended up going back to Colombia. She was a Colombian girl, and then wasn't able to come back to the US.
Okay.
So that kind of put a huge toll on the relationship, and I had to make an executive decision on my end and be like, hey, am I going to continue doing this and try to play the longevity card that really isn't a good hand?
Yeah.
Or am I going to look at it for what it really is and focus a little bit more on what I want to do from a faith journey?
Yes.
But then also what I want to do with my career. So broke it off, man. And obviously care about her, from a distance and stuff. But it made me realize that the things that I was prioritizing were misaligned. So
I love that. And you had to shift
focus.
And I don't want to say like, no, I do want to say this. Things happen in our lives sometimes where we don't understand it. And I just read something, I just listened to something, and it was, don't settle for good when God has great plan for you. And I think me definitely included in the past, where I told you about the journey with me and buying a house in Kentucky. It was like I sucked, or I was seeking good, and I went after good, but in reality, God already had something great that was planned for me, that he was already molding and working on for me. And it takes that leap of faith and that trust in God, which sometimes is so hard to do, especially in the beginning, trusting in God, even when it doesn't seem like it is the right thing to do. Sometimes it takes that in order for things to kind of start correlating and working their way towards what is really supposed to be happening in your life. So,
dude, let me hop on that real quick too.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I love that point, Nick, but like, dude, on top of that, when God closes a door, man, sometimes he keeps that thing. There's a bolt and it's locked shut. He does not want you to go through that. Now, you can go through as a human being, right? Like, we were given free will and we were given the opportunity to choose those things. But once you go through that door, you'll realize exactly why it should have stayed shut the whole time.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I bolted my way through that door a couple of times, bro. Kentucky, Colorado, all these different instances that I could think of where it was like, hey, I'm making it hard for you to do this. Like you, at the end of the day, like how you said, there's free will. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to make it hard on you because I know it's not right for you. I know this is what you're supposed to be doing. So are you going to trust me or are you going to go on your own? And I chose to go on my own. And then when I finally discovered, oh, this wasn't where I'm supposed to be, this is what I'm not supposed to be doing. Once again, like, I don't know if you know the poem with like footprints in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like God, there's only footprint for like one person. Like, why did you leave me that time? He's like, no, I was carrying you the entire time. I was carrying you the entire time. And I think that's just so special and so powerful because at the end of the day, God doesn't give up on you. God is always going to be with you. And once you trust in him and once you believe, he's got your back and he's going to be there for you.
Yeah, man. I think the belief too, that's the free will aspect too, right? It's all under that giant umbrella of, hey man, you got to believe just as much as you know, if you believe that you're going to make $1 million, you know, in the course of your lifetime, right? Or whatever it is, like you also have to believe that I'm going to get you there. So I think it's that combination of knowing and trusting God as much as you believe that you're going to get fit working out. Like it's a great example, dude, what we do just kind of with fitness. We, you know, when we first started, I mean, you started in gymnastics, I started in baseball. For us, it was like, we maybe didn't see the visible results there. And we were just kind of like, all right, man, I know what I can get to and I know what I can achieve. But right now I'm not seeing anything. And then over time and just like that constant pressure, you know, the tension on the muscles and everything, you get to the point to where you're like, dude, I've achieved kind of like what I've wanted when I was young, when I was a kid. But the belief from the get-go was I need to believe that I'm going to get there. Without that, dude, you're not going to want to show up to the gym the next day. You're not going to want to, you know, read a chapter in your Bible that next day or whatever it is. So
let's talk about idolatry really quick, and then let's go into a question that I have for you that just kind of came to me. So you mentioned yours was baseball, mine was gymnastics, and that's so true. When I was in high school, all I cared about was making it to stay in gymnastics, and I accomplished that my senior year, which I'm really, really proud of. But that was my end goal in high school. And then my end goal now has completely shifted. Obviously, recently, I've fully been diving into my faith, and obviously I messed up along the way, and that's definitely going to happen. But as I continue to try to progress and strengthen my faith, like the thing that I feel like is what I care about the most, and the thing that I make my priority right now is just spreading the word of God. Hence the reason why I'm doing this podcast in the first place, because I think there's so much power in everybody's testimonies, and I want to document as many as possible. That's why you're here right now, is I want to get your own personal story documented and your own feelings and beliefs on God documented, so it could help out somebody in the future. Or also having these conversations, I notice this, and maybe you'll notice this as well. Just having these conversations, these spiritual conversations, kind of strengthens your own faith as well. And it's just, in the Bible, it talks about community and just
fellowship. Yeah.
Yep, exactly, fellowship, and just talking to and communicating and being in the moment with people that have the same beliefs as you. What would you say has started becoming your priority right now?
Dude, great question. I would say obviously physical fitness is, you know, definitely a priority, but overall that, you know, we can dive into this a little bit too with my relationship, but prioritizing her, prioritizing my faith right now, to where when I wake up, dude, I cannot function without being able to read a chapter right now.
Really?
Dude, right now I'm on 1 Timothy, but I've just been able to really focus on, hey, if I get that one chapter out of the way, and more of like, sometimes it becomes a checklist item because you know that you can't function, and sometimes you don't want to do it, man. I wake up and I'm like, the last thing I want to do is do this right now. But when you do it, you feel so much better. Your day goes by smoother. It's more of a seamless way of going about life. And I think that has been one staple in my daily routine that I cannot take away.
Bro, I love that. That's something I don't do right now. When I wake up, and honestly, this is like a terrible habit to start with. I wake up and I just go right to my office. So like I wake up, I don't even because I work from home. So I just wake up, roll out of bed, go into my office, and like I just do that. I don't eat, I don't do anything. Well, I just started Athletic Greens AG1. So
Oh yeah.
I'm
Sponsor
drinking
them.
that.
Sponsor them.
Sponsor me, Athletic Greens. No, I just started that. So like that's part of my whole daily routine. But putting God first when it comes to waking up, when it comes to the first thing I do when I wake up, I don't do. And I love that. That's something I should definitely start to incorporate.
Yeah, man. I think that just sets your day up for success. And I'll tell you something crazy, man. I've noticed, and this could be subjectively different for every person, but for me, it's completely different how I interact with people and how I go back, or how I combat situations that might have ticked me off or might have like upset me early on. So like, let's say I spill, a drink all over me. I don't drink coffee. So like, let's say water, right? But like, let's say I spill water all over me in the morning, man. And all of a sudden I'm just like a little bit more frustrated without having read the Bible or, read that chapter, whatever it is. Dude, and then the next thing goes, and then the next thing goes, and then all of a sudden now I have 10 different things on top of work items, on top of just kind of like common life circumstances or inconveniences. And you just end your day and you're like, you're frustrated at yourself, you're frustrated at the world, instead of starting off your day reading the Bible, reading a chapter, just reading honestly a couple verses, man. Like even that sets yourself up for such success, because those conversations go by a little bit easier. That water doesn't seem as it's not as crazy. Yeah. That spill isn't as bad.
No.
And things like that. So yeah, man, I would definitely incorporate that. And I know you're obviously a man of faith and stuff. So I think even doing it in the morning, just right when you wake up, kind of like setting it up to where you have that is obviously going to be super beneficial.
I love that. And you mentioned your relationship, and I do want to dive into that because I feel like that's something that we talk about a lot, but I want to, before we get into that part, let's talk about that season beforehand. So my current season, the season that you were in before that, was a season of singleness where it was, hey, I'm by myself right now. I'm doing my own thing. And I'm just so curious right now because I'm in that current place. Like, what were you doing during that time? Like, what were you doing during that time?
Dude, I was trying to figure myself out. Honestly, I was doing the best that I could during work and everything. But not only that, just trying to get accustomed to Atlanta. I mean, dude, it was so fun just kind of switching over here, transitioning to a new city. South Florida was completely different. Atlanta was brand new. I could start over. I could just kind of like create whatever path I wanted. Yeah. So I was exploring, man, going to Braves games, doing everything I could, but then also getting myself involved in the fellowship, kind of the community, what you were talking about. So right now, I mean, before I even started, my relationship, I applied for a couple different things within my company. I'm the wellness ambassador for Insight Global, for the HQ, which is awesome. But I've involved myself in a Christian group. I actually kickstarted it with one of my coworkers over at Insight.
That's so cool.
Dude, it really just created like a good path for me to be able to get in a relationship. And funny story I know we'll kick off in a little bit with that, but she was actually one of the first people to join my group. So I knew right then and there, I was like, yeah, man, this is definitely aligning. This is matching up. This is God's plan kind of overall, because if God doesn't have an eye on it, man, you're doing it on your own. And that's the last thing you want to do, because you're going to eventually fail. So
being vulnerable right now, I don't mind getting into it. That was something that I definitely had to do and that I'm working on right now, where it's like, I feel like you shouldn't bring somebody else into your life until you have that firm foundation with who you are as a person and just your relationship with God. So what I would do in the past, and I think that would bite me, was I would start with building my relationship with God, and I would start going on this productive and what I would be happy doing, like this relationship with him that I would be happy doing. And then let's say someone comes into my life and it's like, wow, this girl's amazing. Like she's awesome. She's super attractive. That was a thing though. That was another thing. Yeah. I cared initially, I'd say most of my relationships in the past was like, how attractive is this person? And then, does she have similar interests as me? But it was never like, what is her faith in God? My most recent relationship, person didn't believe in anything. Mm-hmm. And I cast that aside and it didn't bother me because she was really attractive. And
did you try to talk about that initially, like when you guys first
talked about it one time, and shortly after is when the relationship ended? So I didn't necessarily know her beliefs because it was just something I wasn't prioritizing at all. So this was last year, and it was beginning last year, so it was a little over a year ago. And I wasn't even thinking about that. I was so into a bunch of other things that I was doing. Once again, it was me. It was, oh, I'm working on this right now. I'm working on that right now. I'm doing my own thing. And the way it was brought up was I let her know that my biggest fear was death, because I didn't know what to expect. And I would say like, oh, like I like to think that I believe in God, and I like to think that I'm a Christian. I like to think that there's heaven after this or whatever. But I'm like, but just the thought and the unknown of not knowing. Once again, this is me like not practicing my faith whatsoever. Like this would bother me, which is so crazy because like this would bother me my entire life. But now I'm in a place right now where like I don't think about this at all. Yeah. And she was like, well, what do you mean when you die, you just die? I'm like, well, that's not what I believe. But after that, like when I found out, okay, like she's just like full blown atheist. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, like this person is not aligned with me. At the time, it didn't matter to me though, because once again, that wasn't my cornerstone. That wasn't my priority. But it's just crazy how your mind can shift now. So for me being in a stage of singleness, I understand now because I've seen all the amazing things that he's done for me, especially recently, where I went through a bunch of hard stuff, dude. I went through a bunch of hard stuff, and he presented himself to me every single time, and he showed himself in miracles that I just can't explain. Yeah. It's completely unexplainable. And having that proof and understanding that now, and understanding what I believe I'm supposed to be doing, it's like, okay, I need to get myself right. Just like how you're saying, I need to get myself right before I could bring anybody into the relationship, or bring anybody into a relationship with me. Yeah.
And dude, I think it was for me, obviously like we're right around the same age, both of us, but it gives you such a different perspective when you were single and you were happy being single and you enjoyed it. And dude, don't get me wrong, man, single years were awesome. I really like found myself. I could focus on, the things that I wanted to as well, but you do have to be content with being able to kind of like move on from that. And that's where I was with my current relationship. I was ready to make that transition, and I was ready to make that shift in my life, versus I'm kind of being yanked away from that single life. And then I feel like that's when you get the regret. That's when you get the insecurities that populate, because I mean, think about it. If you've been in a relationship for like, let's say 5-6 years, right? And then you get out of that relationship, and then you're jumping into a new one, and then you're getting into another one for 3 or 4 years. You're constantly on this cyclical thing to where you're never being able to just like look at yourself and say, hey, am I content with myself? Yes. Am I happy with who I am as a human being? And am I able to focus, my relationship with God just as much as my relationship with this girl?
And let's bring up the whole cyclical aspect, because that is something that we do. It's like we humans are a creature of habit, whether we like it or not. Like we get used to doing a certain thing, and then it just becomes who we are sometimes. So going into a relationship, and right when one ends, you feel like the need to be in another relationship. How do we break that off? What do you think is your opinion on that?
Dude, great point. I've never had that issue because I've never had a relationship longer than a year. Yeah. But I would say personally, from what I've seen with my friends, mom's a psychologist too, so that definitely helps. But it does. I would say, coming from so many different perspectives and so many different viewpoints on it, if you take time for yourself within that relationship, you can break that habit, right? Yep. But you also have to take time for yourself outside of the relationship too. So whether it's hanging out with your girlfriends as a girl, whether it's hanging out with your guy friends as a guy, or whatever it is, being able to have that time to where you're able to focus and devote yourself to God, but also devote yourself to yourself.
Finding yourself.
Yeah, man. Because I've seen plenty of people that have transitioned into another relationship, and it's been an extreme success. Because during their last relationship, they came to terms, and they came to a completed term, with that relationship. So they understood it was like, I got closure. I got everything that I needed from that. And I knew that it wasn't for me.
So you were talking about in your stage of singleness, when you're in that season, you were finding out who you are as a person. You're getting your relationship right with God. You started a group that you would meet with, and y'all would meet and just strengthen that relationship. So when you met your girlfriend and when y'all were getting together, was there ever, or maybe even before that, was there ever a time of need where it was like, man, I really want to be in a relationship right now, I'm going to try to force something? Or was it always like, I don't think it's the right time right now?
Dude, all that kind of got me like thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Dude, the friendship stage was
Ah.
definitely something that I feel is crucial in anything,
Yes.
right? Because when I first started just kind of getting to know her and everything like that, we were talking as friends. We were talking like, you know, like two peas in a pod. Like we knew each other through and through. We knew our defaults. We knew the things that, you know, made us tick and things like that. So that process was so much easier just to kind of like switch the, you know, flip the switch or whatever you want to call it. And then go into the relationship status of it. But if I didn't have that, man, it would have been a lot more of just a strenuous process, because I wouldn't have been able to just be, you know, jump in or know when the right time was to make that decision. And that friendship baseline or that foundation gives us such a different angle on relationships.
And it builds that compatibility, and it just builds that relationship of who they are as a person.
Yep.
So just understanding who they are as a person. I love that. And I think that's a great point, because especially in a day now, like nowadays, where it's like people prioritize different things, and we have, I think, not different feelings, just our priorities sometimes get shifted because of the world that we live in right now. So building that friendship first and being like, I like who you are as a person.
For sure.
And I could hang out with you, and I enjoy my time hanging out with you. I enjoy my time talking to you. I enjoy my time whether I'm FaceTiming you or whatever we're doing. Like, it's just really cool spending time with you.
Yeah. And you grow as, I feel like every relationship should be a friendship, right? Like you should see your girlfriend, you should see your boyfriend as your best friend. And you should see each other as people that obviously like you want to hang out with. Like I'm excited to give her a call. I'm excited to see her, different things like that. So I don't see it as more of like, okay, there's needs to be a strict process or procedure to going into the relationship. So yeah, man, definitely the friendship, building that foundation, and then also just getting to know each other, like seeing what each other, you know, what I like about her, what she doesn't like about me, what she likes about me, things like that give you such a different perspective, because then you're like, okay, we've already talked about the tough topics. Yep. We've already talked about the things that are do or die, or that are, you know, non-negotiables. Our faith. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And whatnot. Oh yeah. I mean, let's go into non-negotiables, because that has shifted for me. And now that you're in a relationship right now, I want to get your perspective on this as well. Before, non-negotiables for me was like, I didn't care about faith. It was like, we figure it out. I remember I talked to a psychologist one time, and I was seeing another girl, and she believed in something, but she wasn't like a Christian. Like she believed in God, but like she also believed in other things. And I was upset with my psychiatrist or whatever, because he was like, well, that's not the type of person you want to be with anyway. Like you should be with someone that's a Christian.
Truth hurts, man.
Yeah. So like, but I didn't like how he was telling me to do something. I'm like, I don't want you to tell me what to do. I'm going to do my own thing. So then like, it was almost because he said that, it made me want to do it even more. It made me want to spend time with this person anyway. But like my non-negotiables were just completely shifted. I was like, well, I wanted to work out because I work out. So I want us to have that in common. And then it was like, well, I'm how attractive she is really important to me. And I was like, all right, well, I do want her to be my best friend. I want us to get along or whatever, but like, it was never notice how the one thing I'm not talking about is like faith, and does she go to church, and is she seeking God right now? How much does faith matter in her life? How much is it a part of her everyday life? Which is like the most important thing for me now. What were like non-negotiables, or how was that process for you, where it's like, okay, like this person does match this, or this person doesn't match this?
Dude, early on, man, it was, my parents just like really taught me a lot of different things with that. So my mom was a huge advocate of the girl has to be a Christian. The girl has to have some of these principles, because think about it like this, man, just from the Christian aspect. If you let the world or your culture or society dictate who you are, it's ever changing and ever shifting.
Yeah.
So if you're not able to have a baseline or a good foundation whenever you go out into the world, or you go out into a relationship or whatever it is, somebody can just completely shift your mindset or shift how you think about things.
Completely agree.
And then it becomes something to where it's always just going to be malleable. And I don't feel like faith in certain ways, right, should be fully malleable. I feel like, yeah, your relationship with Jesus can change, how you view him or how you view, your status and stuff like that certain days, because you just love him more some days, and then other days you might be frustrated.
Yeah.
But as long as that kind of, it stays stagnant. But yeah, man, that was definitely non-negotiable from the get-go with any relationship I've ever been in. Even though I wasn't as far along with my faith prior to this one, it was still something that I knew that I had to kind of, lean my back on. But that's one, definitely like a cheating aspect. And we can dive into that a little bit too. But that's something that I feel like opens up so many doors and opens up so many different possibilities. And it's tough to kind of go back from that.
I agree.
But yeah, man, just good work ethic, things that you see as, common kind of things in society right now that you see like you value from somebody else, but also incorporating it back to Christ, and then being selfless, being forgiving, doing those things too. So
when I was in past experiences and past relationships, beyond doubt, my clothing brand was created because I know what it feels like to feel like you're not good enough. I know what it feels like to be rejected, not just in relationships, but everything. Like, I got rejected. First time I applied for Salesforce, I didn't get it. They rejected me. They didn't even look at my resume. They just rejected me flat out.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. And now I'm making the most of it. Let's go. So,
That's right.
But it was everything. Like, I felt rejected, and I know what it felt like, and I wanted to spread loving yourself. I wanted to spread, you can literally do whatever you can. And that's why I continue to push myself now, is because like I'm finally understanding that. I'm understanding that like we can do so much more than we ever gave ourselves credit for.
We're capable of a lot, man.
Humans are capable of so much. Is absolutely ridiculous. And once you get past that threshold of like, oh, this is all I could ever become, it just amazes you how much you could actually do. But in the past, when it came to not feeling like I was good enough for specific women, it was like I would look at this girl that I was seeing, and I'd be like, wow, you are super, super attractive, or I feel like you're better than me because of just who you are as a person. I'm like, I know my mistakes, and I don't know yours, so I'm going to put you on a pedestal, and I'm going to do whatever I possibly can in order to try to please you. So going to your whole idolatry thing before, when it came to baseball, I was definitely doing that with women in the past, where it was like I literally put them first in my life, and I put my own passions, my own maybe interests or things that I wanted to do or I wanted to pursue, definitely God, I would put that on the back burner in order to try to please this person. And what did it come with? Well, one, it's not fair to that person, because no one should feel like they need to be at the top of someone's life in that way. Because honestly, only God should be there. Only your father should be there. But also, it's just such an unhealthy thing to continue to try to please someone when you're not loving yourself. And honestly, what that showed was I was just in a spot of loving myself as a person and being okay with who I was. And in order to try to get that the validity and get that approval, I was seeking it from somebody else.
Yeah, and human beings are always going to fall short, man. Mm. And you know that, right? But it's like we have our imperfections, and that's what makes us so great. Kind of like our little things that are quirks and our kinks and stuff, like things that people look at and they're like, oh my gosh, I love, that he has this or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And I think like if we look at human beings always as like, you need to follow Scripture to the T. I want you to be perfect. Just because you're attractive, now I want you to have all these other characteristics and traits. It's like they're always going to fall short, and we're always going to be disappointed. And I think like looking at God and just being like, that is the one person that has always been a constant in my life. Yeah. Regardless of if I wanted him there or not, you know, he's been there since the beginning. So that's one thing that in a relationship, imagine a girl not having a relationship with that. Or a guy having, struggles with that. You can have your struggles and you can have the things that your shortcomings, but if there's not like already some sort of, approach to want to understand Jesus, want to understand God, it's tough to just like throw that in there early on in a relationship, because they might feel like, that other person might feel like we're pretty much just bombarding them with all this insight and all this information instead of them finding it for themselves.
I love that you brought that up. Let's talk about that for a second. I can change him. I can change her. What are your thoughts on that?
Oof, man, dude. I feel like the only person that can change you is yourself.
Yep.
So I think that if the circumstances are right and if the situation deems it, you will change.
Yep.
But I do not want to ever, and I hope I don't ever impose change on somebody else unless it's something positive that could be something like, hey, let's just kind of like shift focus here on the dishes or whatever it is, right? Versus, hey, these are cornerstones of your life and these are things that you really, you know, believe and you really like stand for. Let's switch those priorities up and let's change that. I feel like it builds so much resentment over time for that other person.
I agree with that. And I would say there are some things that are a cornerstone that you just need go into non-negotiables and whatnot. We both agree that someone needs to be a Christian if they're going to be in a relationship with us. If we choose to be in a relationship with someone, we've already made that decision where like they need to be a Christian, they need to follow Christ.
That's their choice, right? Like that's something that everybody chooses, you know. I feel like there's so many different things. Like some people, you know, like this, or some people like this. For us, and from what we've seen from our lives, it's kind of like that's something that we can't really debate, you know.
Yeah. And having, don't get me wrong, like people change and people can, like how you said, people need to want to change. And can someone that doesn't, maybe is a non-believer, believe in God, absolutely. Happens all the time. It needs to be their choice though. And I think understanding that definitely will help in the future. And then there are going to be some things that, you guys might not necessarily agree on, but that's where it comes to like, does this person check your boxes? Because when you get into that realm, I think you're in a losing battle. Define what are your non-negotiables and then be okay with the things that aren't your non-negotiables, because no one's going to be perfect for you. And at the end of the day, you're not even, someone might check your boxes, then you can spend time with that person and they're actually not even the person you want to be with. Exactly. Right?
Yeah. It happens all the time, dude. And like, those non-negotiables are already like kind of like they're there, and then all of a sudden you find out, like I remember growing up, I was like, all right, I have to even just date a girl that like speaks Spanish or speaks another language or whatever the case is. And then I realized like later on, I was like, dude, I can kind of practice that on my own. Like, you know, I can like focus on different things versus like having that as a non-negotiable in my head. And I think it's really just like going back to our list or going back to kind of, you know, whatever headspace that we were in when we made those decisions, and looking at it and being able to say, okay, what are true non-negotiables? What are things that I need 2 feet to firmly stand on, you know, versus having something to where it's like, okay, this girl has to have blonde hair, and then you start liking this girl that's a brunette.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, what the heck,
dude? It's like, wait a second, this isn't what I thought I needed.
Exactly, man. Trust me, been there, done that. So I definitely get that. But yeah, man. So I love that, just the non-negotiable aspect.
All right, and then so you're in a relationship right now, and you've been there. It's how long has it been since you guys have been? It's fairly new. She's gonna
kill me if she hears this. It was January 5th, so it's been like a month and a couple weeks.
Okay. So you're in that new season right now where y'all are officially like boyfriend and girlfriend. What do you feel like your steps right now, just in the sense of like following God with somebody else in your life right now? Like how is that going? And like, I just want to get your perspective on that, like sharing that relationship with somebody else. Great
thing is we both already built our own individual relationship with God. So that was already kind of there. But yeah, man, just being able to like, obviously attend this church group that we're in through my company and stuff. That's a huge plus. Being able to bring her to different events. She invited me to an event. Oh man, I don't remember the name of the city. It was like near, oh my gosh, it's some city in Florida. It was like North Florida. Okay. Can't recall, but
like, dude, Jacksonville area.
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
No, I know Jacksonville. I was going to say, dude, I can't remember the name of the city, tiny little town, but we went to this event. Super cool, man.
Oh.
And we ended up just kind of exploring our faith there. It was just kind of like a worship event to where you also got involved with just like a bunch of good guest speakers talking about our faith, a bunch of different things. So it gave me such a different perspective on, you know, growing our religion through our faith too. And I think that's something that we've really just relied on, but it's long distance, so it's tough.
Yeah.
So that's another factor, but being able to prioritize time with each other too, whether it's individual time to where, hey, we got a date night and it's freaking, what's it called? You know, Valentine's Day or something, right? Let's just like spend a couple hours and just chatting and stuff and like catching up on our day. That to me gives me such a different viewpoint on like our relationship, even when distance is such a huge factor.
I love how you talked about, well, me and her both have our own relationships with God. Me and her are both solidified in our faith, because when you're in a relationship, and I was just watching a sermon on this by Ben Stewart, he was talking about like, when I'm bringing up marriage right now, but you get the point. It's like two people become one. Like you need to be able to be like, it's not two halves becoming one, right? It's two wholes, two people becoming one, in the sense of like, you need to solidify your own faith before you bring somebody else in. And you and your girlfriend are both very comfortable and content with where you are, where you individually stand with Christ, where it's like, okay, like we are prepared right now to be in a relationship now because of that cornerstone, because of that foundation that y'all have built individually. Now
real quick on that.
Yeah, go for it.
I think, dude, a great quote that I've heard has been, it's two independent people being in a relationship together.
Yes.
And being dependent on the little things, taking out trash, a couple little financial things here and there, but you're two independent people understanding each other, all your, niche things that you like to do, the niche things that, that other person likes to do, and then being able to say, okay, we can come together and actually, come to terms with the big thing, which is the relationship in God. So.
Amen. I love that. Now, so y'all establish your own personal relationship with God. How have you, and you mentioned it a little bit, let's elaborate on it a little bit. So you mentioned how you guys just went to this thing in Florida where y'all spent time with each other, and that was like a whole Christian, get together. Are there little things that y'all do throughout the day where it's like, hey, I'm keeping my faith and you're keeping your faith. Let's keep our faith together and let's do this together.
Dude, I definitely believe in just kind of spot checking different things too throughout the day, or just sporadically like, updating different things. And one thing that we do is, I'm trying to think, during the week it's a little bit harder just to kind of like talk about, different things, but we'll end the night with prayer,
Really?
We do, man.
That's so cool.
It's pretty, it's at first it was a little bit uncomfortable, for
sure.
both of us probably, because it's like through the phone, we're trying to figure it out, whatever. But then over time it just becomes so natural, and you're able to just, it's like we alternate. So she'll pray, I'll pray, and we'll just kind of like go back and forth there. But it gives the night, it like puts a little cap on the night,
I love that.
I think that's something that is a daily just kind of affirmation or a daily routine that we choose to do. And we're kind of like complimenting each other in a way during the prayer, but also talking about things that we struggled with throughout the day and stuff too. So,
dude, I love that. Being real and just incorporating prayer together is such a powerful and such a special thing. I don't have that right now, but
you're praying by yourself though.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Exactly. No, but I just think that's so special. And listening to you, I think, and I hope other people are able to get this as well. It's like, hey, when that season, if you're single right now, when that season of being in a relationship with another person comes into effect and then becomes like your current season, it's like, maybe I want to do this. I'm listening to Paul right now, and it makes me think like, oh, I want to do that as well.
Yeah, dude, it's been a long journey, guys. So whoever's listening, and if you guys need any sort of kind of like guidance, motivation, whatever, I learned along the way. So it wasn't, all the answers weren't there from the beginning. It took me a lot of trial and error. It took me a lot of different ways of just going about things my way and then coming up short and failing. But now that, I've shifted my focus, I've shifted, my mentality with everything. It's really given me more of a faith-based relationship. And dude, there's going to be times where you do not want to pray. You do not want to just kind of like read the Bible like we talked about a little bit earlier, but the consistency and the discipline, as much as you're disciplined going to work, as much as you're disciplined with a gym or whatever kind of habitual routine you have, it gives us a different perspective when we're disciplined with God and we've seen the reward from it.
I want to share something. I talked about this in a previous episode. I was always scared to talk about God when it came to my work because I didn't want other people to judge me. It was kind of a touchy subject for me. It was just something I wasn't prepared to fully embrace in my everyday life. So when we go to church, it is, hey, don't only include Jesus on Sundays, include Jesus every day. And I had a one-on-one with my director. And I brought up my faith in God because she was asking me about like my podcast or whatever. And I explained that to her. She asked me if I knew a band, and it was Need to Breathe. And Yeah. Well, do you know Who Need to Breathe? I did not know Who Need to Breathe was. Cool. So she mentioned this when I was going through my hard time when it came to my faith last year. She mentioned the band to me, but I never looked it up and I never understood who they were. She mentioned it to me again after I told her about the podcast, and I looked them up, and that's when I realized that they were a Christian band. I was scared to talk about my faith in Christ this entire time, when in reality my director, like, her favorite band that she was so excited to attend a concert in Florida with is a Christian band, and I had no idea, and it just blew my mind. So what I wanted to, moving forward with what I wanted to say was, I just think it was so cool that you made the decision to include God in your company so much, to basically start a group where you got people together that have the exact same opinions, or maybe not same opinions, but the same faith as you. And that's really, really cool, dude.
Dude, yeah, it took a little bit of just kind of, we tried to go through the culture, we tried to go through energy, we tried to go through a couple different routes, and it wasn't working.
Really?
So it was very easy, man. And these are kind of like the situations where you can give up, right? And you can just kind of like go through it and say, no, you know what? It's not worth it.
What made you keep going?
Dude, we knew that this was the right thing to do, and we knew that there were Christians in our company that were ecstatic about it, that were enthusiastic about just kind of like talking about their faith in a work environment. So got our VP on board, man. And
I love that.
And we ended up just kind of like going through it. And now we meet regularly. We go weekly. We'll have, 30, 45 minute sessions in. Mm-hmm. And every single person on that call has talked, whether it's on the call, because we'll do it sometimes with people online, like via Zoom or whatever it is. Yeah. And then we'll have people in person, but everybody's talked. Everybody's kind of divulged something that they're passionate about, or how their relationship with God has changed. So it's been a journey, but now like we're really reaping the rewards and seeing the results.
Bro, I love that. So I'm gonna try to do that. I'm gonna try it out, I don't know if it exists. I don't think it does, but I'm gonna try to start it. Let's see what happens. This is gonna be updated, this is gonna be a to be continued aspect of this conversation. The last thing I want to end with is I just want to know, I'm just curious what your own personal next steps are, whether that be with the relationship, not necessarily like, oh, this specific relationship, like what's going to happen after that, but like, what is your priority right now? And like, what are you focusing on right now?
Dude, it is so easy for me to go in and just give you 30 different answers, because I am one of the most analytical people I know. And just like thinking about the future progressively, trying to think about things. For me, it's really staying in the present right now. And Amen. Just trying to be patient with whether it's like shifting roles within my company, whether it's going up, within my current role, whatever it is, man, I'm really just kind of saying I'm going to focus on what I need to do and my day to day and what I can accomplish, with my relationship, more along the lines of like, let's try to enjoy the times that we have separate. Yes. So we can enjoy those times that we're together a lot more. Yes. Because the last thing you want to do is, in a relationship, that person be in a different city, different state, whatever the case is, and then they're missing out on their own personal life, and they're missing out on their kind of accomplishments or whatever they want to do that they've already fabricated on their own, right? Yep. So I don't want to take that away from anybody. I want it to be, you live your life there, I'm going to live my life here. We can both interconnect, and we're going to have time to be able to talk and update each other. But at the end of the day, just be able to kind of, be in the present, focus on the moment, and try to accomplish whatever we can now.
The enemy tries to draw in our head that we want what we don't have. Yep. So whether it be marriage, when you're single, all you could think about is being married. And this isn't everyone, but this is a lot of people. When you're single, all you could think about is being married. And then when you finally get that, then all of a sudden, not that you want to be single, but like your priorities shift as to what are the things that you don't have right now. And I love that you said, I'm going to embrace the present, and I want my partner to embrace the present and just love and appreciate what they have in this current time. And then when we spend time with each other, we're gonna love and appreciate that time as well. That's so powerful, dude. And I think that's something that we all need to remember.
Dude, yeah. Over time, like I said, I try to think about the future all the time. So that's kind of a goal right now, just to really reel it back, right? And then just be like, dude, I need to focus on what I'm doing right now, because this day will never happen again.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for being on, dude. This was awesome.
Nick, I love what you're doing, man. It's awesome, dude. So I appreciate you having me, bro. And I'm excited to kind of keep this journey going with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Cool, brother.